Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast. The Steelers win their preseason finale against the Carolina Panthers 19-10, but the big news was Derrick Harmon, who was injured during this game, and it looked scary. We give you the insight on what we saw and what we've learned. We also have Dr. Kerina Maharaja joining the show to talk about knee injuries and what could be the case there. That's all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com, and you can find me here every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes on the Pittsburgh Steelers, including our bonus content, sometimes here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. All right, Steelers fans, we won't talk much about the game at first. The big news, of course, was Derrick Harmon's injury, which was very scary in the moment because Derrick Harmon went down. Didn't look bad no one really noticed it live, but the biggest thing was when it was reported from people who were there at the game that he went into the blue medical tent. And then shortly after that, you see on the broadcast, I was not in Carolina, of course I'm here in Pittsburgh, you see Derrick Harmon on a cart looking very unhappy, with a towel over his head, being carted off the field into the Steelers locker room. That was a scary sight, and it was noted that he was out pretty quickly after that by the Steelers, saying that he had a knee injury and he was out for the game. Of course, the worst is thought what's to be going on there. I was going to say, okay, let's wait and see what happens. Fortunately, it does seem like the Steelers dodged a bullet. Derrick Harmon, I think it was during the third quarter, came out of the Steelers locker room, walked on his own power, said with a limp a little bit, but walked on his own power, got to the Steelers sideline, which was on the other side of the field from the Steelers locker room, sat down. The broadcast caught him joking and smiling and laughing with Cam Hayward and TJ Watt on the Steelers bench. That's a good sign that he's not down in the dumps. Also, I did not see a knee brace on him, which if he was wearing one, that might have been a sign for a more serious injury. And so the question now, though, is what does he have? Well, Mike Tomlin, after the game, did explain he has a knee sprain. He's quote a knee sprain of some description, which means we do not know what kind of a knee sprain this is. However, during the game, I went to my trusted doctor that we bring on the show, Dr. Kerina Maharaja. We also have Dr. Harmondio, but we were able to get Dr. Kerina and Dr. K. We've had her on in years past when there's been a big injury. We wanted to know what is the path to recovery, what's the severity. And so this was before we had Mike Tomlin's description of a knee sprain. So take the notice of that. We were still learning this at the time, but I did have an interview with her, which I'll share with you here on this show so that you can see her thoughts of just what she saw, what she thinks it is. And it sounds, from talking to her, if you glean from this conversation, pay attention to how when she's looking at it, she said there were two things she was concerned about. It was the twisting of the knee when he was falling, but also the contact of the knee and the thought that this could be a mild or moderate injury, not a severe injury. Here's my interview with Dr. Kerina Maharaja on what's going on and what to expect with this injury, with this knee injury, and she'll give you some insight into what a mild or a moderate sprain type of an injury would be like. Here's that interview. And we are rejoined here on the Locked On Steelers podcast by our friend, Dr. Kerina Maharaja. She's a doctor in physical therapy. We call her Dr. K on the show. She's come back to give us her thoughts. Dr. K, welcome back to the show. It's always bad news when we got to bring in the doctor, but we love to have your professional opinion on. Thanks for coming back on Locked On Steelers.
Of course, anytime. Good and sad to be back.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Derrick Harmon's injury. Dr. K, please explain to our audience. You watched the play. I sent you the clip with the slow down a little bit. What were your thoughts as you saw Derrick Harmon fall on the play where he was injured?
I didn't love it because there was a little bit of a twisty motion in the way he planted, but then there was also a little bit of a hit to the knee, right? So given these two different things I saw, we could be in a mild type of injury where he has a sprain or a contusion, and that would come more from hitting the ground, right? And we could also start to go into a moderate injury where his MCL could have had a light sprain And then we could move also because of the twisting motion into something severe, where then we're looking at an ACL, MCL, and PCL involved. We call that an unhappy triad. It's really unclear to me how hard he hit the knee on the ground. So that could really differentiate the mild severity versus severe severity of what happened for him.
I totally understand that. One thing that was reported that Derrick Harmon, after the play, was able to get up and walk away on his own power, and then they sat him down on the sideline and said, "Hey, let's take a look at this." How does that impact your view on what happened there? Does that matter at all?
So I think that's a really great thing. It gives me more of an idea that probably a bone is not involved if he was able to walk so well after, right? And actually get up and move. The tricky thing is with knee ligaments, if it is torn, people can still walk for a little bit after it happens. So he might be looking at tonight having a harder time walking versus immediately, depending where the severity of the ligament strain, sprain, tear could be. So, positives and negatives to that.
Absolutely. So let's go back. You talked about as far as negative, or you talked about mild, moderate, and severe injuries. Can you talk about timetables to return if it was something mild, moderate, or severe in this case?
Yeah. So if we're in the mild category, I'm going to say we'll have him back week 2 to 3 to be conservative in the regular season.
Okay.
If we're in the moderate category, he might be missing the first quarter to half of regular season. And if we're in a severe, I'm not sure we'll be seeing him back in the regular season.
That sounds reasonable. Because where it's severe, you're probably talking an ACL, MCL, PCL injuries. Those, of course, have major impacts on athletes. Even if he is able to recover, being a first-round pick, you'd want him to fully recover, of course, and take that. As a doctor of physical therapy, what do those paths look like? Let's say if he's in the mild to moderate and he could be back this season, what do those weeks look like when you're dealing with a patient trying to help them get back to full strength?
Being that he is obviously at this level of an athlete, right? He's going into any injury stronger than the normal person is, right? So his recovery period will be better. He's going to have access to the most top-notch medical care and rehabilitative care Pittsburgh has to offer, maybe outside of Pittsburgh if they want it, right? So I think compared to the layperson, his recovery will be better, but he is a professional athlete. They may be more conservative in bringing him back to play to avoid further injury, right? It just depends how his rehab team decides to nurse or manage the injury at hand.
Absolutely. So we will get more news from this. Again, we can't determine what's going on, but we always love to have Dr. K to come in and give us the potentials of what are all the things the Steelers need to be concerned about with Derrick Harmon. As soon as we do know what will happen, we will report that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Dr. K, Dr. Kerina Maharaja, thank you so much for returning back to the show. Any final thoughts you want to share with our audience about this situation?
I'm Chris Carter's #1 fan. That's it.
Well, I appreciate you, Kerina. Thanks so much, Dr. K, for joining the show. Stay tuned to the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got a lot more to discuss here. So there you have it. There was my interview with Dr. K. Always thank you, Dr. K, for coming on and talking to us on the show. Bottom line is this could be a mild injury. Now, there's still a chance of a sprain being a moderate injury. I also texted Dr. K after we got the designation from Mike Tomlin that it was a sprain of some sort. She says it's definitely not a severe injury then. It's either mild or moderate. So this could be a thing where he's out till week 2 or week 3, or it could be a thing where he's out the first month of the season. But either way, you won't be missing Derrick Harmon for the entire season. He's going to obviously take a rest. It seemed like, again, with him smiling and being able to talk on the sidelines and joke around, got some good news there. We'll still have to wait for the full report from the Steelers on what they saw there. I think the bottom line, though, is Steelers dodged a bullet, and I think it was really funny because going into this, I was also one person that was saying I wanted to see specifically the run game. I didn't need to see Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter. I thought it would be cool to see it, but as far as preseason concerns, this is why the Steelers held out a lot of their guys, because imagine if that was TJ Watt that this was happening over. It was just the first round draft pick rookie and people were tripping. But imagine if that's Jalen Ramsey, who did play in this game, and we'll get to that in a little bit as well. But I thought that there was that this kind of showed like the balance of like, hey, you want to see things, especially with the young guys, you want to see them get some good reps in, get their experience, but you also want to play, you got to play that delicate balance of how much do you want to expose them to and a chance to get injured in a non-meaningful game. So it does look like the Steelers dodged the big bullet. Let's see how much of a hit that Derrick Harmon takes in time to come back from. Maybe we'll get a report soon from the Steelers that'll allow him to be back sooner rather than later. We'll keep you up to date on all of that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But we also have to talk about what we did see and the biggest winners and losers. There was a lot of sloppiness in this game. I'll cover all of that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year because NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. This year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On Steelers listeners are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and updates they're rolling out this month are wild in the best way. Celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness. Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues. It's a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the new season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Go to yahoofantasy.com /LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make this fantasy season the best one yet, only at Yahoo Fantasy. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here. We'll get into a few things a bit. I do want to address the sloppiness of this game because it was very, very sloppy in the long run. When you looked at what happened in this game, total penalties. I'm trying to pull those up. I had these notes here somewhere. The penalties were atrocious. I'm trying to look for the totals in those right now. But especially early on, you had multiple holding penalties calling back big plays. You had offsides calling off run stop. 13 penalties for 104 yards. Only was like 90 yards. That would have been perfect. 13 penalties for 90 yards. Oh, well. September 13th is coming. But for those who gets that inside joke, I appreciate you. But still, not a good sign there. Mike Tomlin was not happy with his team at halftime because when they had committed, I think, at least 8 of those penalties in the first half, some of them just being a little bit too undisciplined in moments. Pat Freiermuth being caught with the holding pay. I know some people were upset about the hold, but I thought it was a legitimate hold. He got his hands outside the frame of the defender, and it's fine at first, but when he tries to turn, you got to let him go. Otherwise, they're going to call it, and they did, and it spoiled what would have been, I think, a 28-yard run for Kenneth Gainwell, who hit the hole nicely. I thought that was kind of rough. There was a hold by Zach Frazier that was pretty bad. And then when I was looking around at other penalties, DeMarvin Leal lining up off sides, blowing a run stuff, and then the very next play they bounce a 28-yard run. And then Jalen Ramsey's penalty. Now, I will say this about Jalen Ramsey's penalty. I'm not too mad at that one because I felt like that was, if that was in a live game, absolutely dumb. But it's a preseason game. I feel like he was just kind of just exerting himself a little bit there. I'm kind of like, I'll give him a pass on that. But if he does that in a real game, it's extra dumb. Still, you don't want to do that, but I feel like that was a little bit, he stuffed the run. He was a little excited. I do think the defense was a little over-eager in this game because they've been itching to go out there and prove themselves. And in doing so, they missed a lot of tackles. And we're going to take that into our biggest winners and losers part when we start looking at those. But there were guys missing tackles, over-pursuing. I think guys were a little over-eager in this game to try to make plays. You got to just settle in and just play your roles. And I think they will when the season gets here. But like Missy Matthews of the Steelers sideline reporter was saying during the game, that like after that first possession where the Steelers allowed the Panthers second team offense to get in scoring range and hit a field goal, they were like, put us back out there. And Mike Thomas said, absolutely not. Keep your butts on the sideline. Now, I do want to point out when it comes to the penalties, when it comes to like the Steelers doing this, they allowed a 28-yard run on a play where DeMarvin Leal kind of just let his side go a little bit, and he scored it around the fifth string outside linebacker. And then you had an offsides penalty that negated a run stuff, so that's 15 yards. Or no, that's basically 32 yards right there that you're giving up on just one guy there. And then Jalen Ramsey's penalty, I think, added another 15 yards to that. So roughly, a big chunk of this drive was just stupid penalties and things where guys who won't be playing in the regular season still made big mistakes. But still, you don't want those things. You want to show good, clean discipline. That was something that the Steelers did show for the majority of their last two preseason games, I believe. So that's not a good sign, and that's for them right now. So I do think that there is that you want to clean up moving forward. And again, like these guys did clean things up in the last 2 weeks. Just maybe a little bit of not showing up with everything lined up in this game. But again, preseason, that's part of what it's for. You want to clean things up. Use this as an opportunity to study. They got to use this as a learning piece and move on. But I will say, and we'll go into this more with the winners and losers segment that'll come next. The guy that turned it on in this game the most was Yahya Black. And I've been telling y'all about Yahya Black in training camp, him mowing people down and bullying people everywhere. And I'm telling you, this guy continues to look like the truth. Now, in this game, he had 2 sacks and a tackle for loss. And I say 2 sacks and a tackle for loss. He was in that backfield. He was pressuring. He also forced a fumble. Now, granted, he's doing this against second teamers and third teamers in this one. So it's not like, he beat the number 1 guard in the nation for a big play. But Yahya Black was brought to this team as a 5th rounder, as a big behemoth who was just going to be in the middle of the defense as a backup defensive lineman, and he was going to help stuff the run. But when I looked at the play, at least on the biggest sack that he made where he forced the fumble, it looked like he had a push and pull where he was able to use his long arms to kind of extend the guy out. And then when the guy tried to lean in to fight back, he kind of pulled his pads just slightly more, and that threw him off and lost his balance. And he had a clear path to the quarterback, and he stripped the ball loose, which led to a fumble and a turnover for the Steelers defense. He had 5 tackles in this game. Yahya Black looked really good, and it was after that second sack, because I think they actually came on back-to-back plays. After that second sack, I didn't see him anymore. You know why? Because the Steelers said, hey, we just lost Derrick Harmon. We do not need to lose the guy that might be replacing Derrick Harmon if he's out for an extended period of time. Yahya Black looks for real. Now, again, when he goes up against top-tier talent and star offensive linemen, guys are going to be able to respond to him better and do things. But he is going to be a young, physical presence at the defensive line, where when Keanu Benton needs a blow, or Derrick Harmon needs a blow, or Cam Hayward needs a blow, one of these guys, they're going to put him in and be confident that he can come out and he can be physical at the point of attack. He can help stuff the run. He can at least, at the worst, he is going to force you to double team him to not let him collapse your play. And that, I think, is a very encouraging sign that this guy is working so well. If you guys remember, during training camp, there was 1 week where I told you guys I was standing waiting for practice to end, and I was standing next to former Steelers defensive tackle Tyson Alualu, who was there with his son. And Tyson Alualu was standing there. We know each other because I was on the beat at the time when he played. And I asked him what he thought about Yahya Black, and he was like, Chris, that guy can move. And I mean, some defensive linemen can move, but that guy should not be able to move the way he moves, being as big as he is. He's like, it looks ridiculous. And he looks like he has a motor on him. And so when you see that appreciation from an NFL vet like Alualu, who was in the NFL for many years and was, a good player for the Steelers for some time, and you see Yahya Black doing these things, I think he's checking off a lot of boxes. And if it was a situation where if Derrick Harmon has to miss a game or two, maybe we could see Yahya Black. And if he comes out and looks good, we could have a situation where the Steelers have 2 new young defensive line presences who are physical at the point of attack and being game changers, and that could change everything of what the Steelers want to do in this game. I gotta say, that was a very impressive showing by Yahya Black. I thought he did a really good job in this game. I thought he's had a really good training camp, a really good preseason. To cap it off in this way, I think he's ready to go for the regular season. I think you'll see him subbing in a lot for the Steelers as the season wears on. But while he was my biggest winner, there were other winners in this game. There were also some losers. I want to talk about those and the impact of how the Steelers are going to look at that as they head into their final practices this weekend before they cut their final roster cuts are due Tuesday. We'll get into all that here next on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know that any of this actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help you. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. I found that therapy isn't just for navigating major challenges and big moments. It's also about building positive coping skills that help you learn how to set boundaries and move forward. With therapy from BetterHelp, you'll not just be helped for the moment, but you can learn how to help yourself for a lifetime. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month when they sign up at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here responding to the Steelers' 19-10 preseason win over the Carolina Panthers in their final preseason game of this season for the final tune-up before their season opener on September 7th against the Jets. Now, I talked about Yahya Black, but let's talk about some other winners. We'll get to some losers in a second here. But I thought Yahya Black was the biggest winner. I also thought another good winner was Caleb Johnson. And he was a guy who I talked a little bit about in my Thursday episode. Some people thought it was crazy to talk about Caleb Johnson needing to prove something, but I thought he did. He ran hard, and he had a few hard runs behind the first-team offensive line, which is what I was kind of looking for. How is he going to develop that chemistry? And you saw a little bit. He finished the game 5 carries, 24 yards. It's an average of 4.8 yards per carry. And he had some really good cuts in there. And there were some I thought that the offensive line showed a little bit more synergy in their ability to get off the ball, block, push guys around. And granted, yes, Carolina Panthers, not exactly a very good team at this point, but also playing a lot of their backups. So, take that with what you will. But seeing the chemistry period is a good sign, and I thought Caleb Johnson taking advantage of it was also a good sign. Kudos to him for him showing up there and delivering in that way. I don't think he's RB1, but I do think that he is someone the Steelers are going to be happy to sub in and get his reps when it's time to run the ball. Another winner I thought was Ben Sauls. Just shout out to him, even though he has no chance of course, supplanting Chris Boswell. He goes 4 for 4 on field goals. Was really impressed by that. He made field goals, 38, 50, 49, and 28. Ben Sauls can kick long field goals. In fact, he has the second longest field goal, 1 yard behind Chris Boswell's longest field goal at Acrisure Stadium. Boswell has a 59-yarder. Ben Sauls has a 58-yarder. Really impressed by him. He's made some clutch kicks in his life, both in the Sun Bowl against Cincinnati. In a big comeback that Pitt had. Ben Sauls won't make this team, but I do think that he's put himself in the position where someone's going to give him a call as soon as they're not confident in their kicker or if their kicker gets hurt. So kudos to him for doing that. I think he's done a heck of a job this offseason. Another guy that I thought really impressed was Scotty Miller. He caught that bomb from Skylar Thompson, and trust me, we'll get to Skylar Thompson in a bit here. But he caught that bomb for 53 yards that set up that field goal right before halftime that tied it up. Scotty Miller cemented his place in this roster, y'all. I know that some people really want Robert Woods. I know some people really want Max Hurlman. I know some people really want Keyshawn Johnson. People wanted Rock Taylor. Scotty Miller's done all the little things right, and he's making plays. He's going to be on this team. He's locked it in. Congratulations to him. He's had a great camp and preseason to talk about. Trey Sermon, I thought, also kind of cemented his role as probably the running back that they bring to the practice squad. He's not going to take any roster spot because they already have Jaylen Warren, Caleb Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell. But Trey Sermon, 4 carries, 39 yards. I thought he did good there. He also had 3 catches for 14 yards. Pretty good job there, in my opinion, when looking at what was asked of him. I also put Jack Sawyer and DeMarvin Leal in the winner's circles, whereas DeMarvin Leal did have that offsides penalty and did get busted on that 28-yard run. DeMarvin Leal also, I thought, was really helpful in stuffing a lot of runs. He had 3 tackles. He was coming down the line a lot. Pretty solid play there. But I'll also say Jack Sawyer was really impressive. He got a few pressures in there, had 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, 4 tackles total. I've been impressed by Jack Sawyer. Not that I think he's a world beater or he's ready to take anyone's job, but I do think that he might be the run-stuffing outside linebacker this Steelers team has been looking for to come off the bench, because Nick Herbig, a good guy to come off the bench to pass rush. Jack Sawyer, I think he's the opposite. Like, he's not as much of a pass rusher, even though he showed some potential here and there. I think he's more of the run stuffer, and they need that. DeMarvin Leal, I thought, overall had a good game. My only problem with DeMarvin Leal is it could be too little too late for him to make the roster. He's more of an outside linebacker now, and they got 4 of those guys that they're definitely keeping in Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, and now Sawyer. Do they want to keep a 5th one? Maybe. I think DeMarvin Leal, he's on a rookie contract, so he'd be cheap, but we'll see what the Steelers do with him. And then my other winner here was Lance McCutcheon. I thought he caught a touchdown pass. I think he's done a good job, so good on him. But let's talk about Skylar Thompson and Mason Rudolph, because Mason Rudolph was a loser in this game for me. I don't think, though, that Mason Rudolph lost the second job at the quarterback position for the Steelers. I don't think they're going to judge that harshly on a preseason game where he threw a pass that, yes, it was an ill-advised pass. I said it was a terrible pass when it happened on Twitter, but at the same time, like, I'm not sweating over preseason interceptions unless it's like a whole bunch of them. Now, this is back-to-back games with them, and that's certainly a concern. And Skylar Thompson did come out and complete 11 of 13 passes for 152 yards and a touchdown with a pass rating of 141. But again, teams ain't preparing for either quarterback. There's a lot of circumstances that could be played into there. I do think that Skylar Thompson deserves the win for this day, but I still think this is going to be Mason Rudolph's job moving forward as the number 2 quarterback. But I do think it's a question now, and it was a little bit more, it felt more obvious to me yesterday when we talked with Nick Farabaugh, feeling that like, oh, they'll just let Skylar Thompson go and Will Howard will be the guy. But now you're kind of sitting there like, do you want to have that? Do you want to have that guy in your back pocket for if everything goes wrong and Aaron Rodgers goes down, then Mason Rudolph goes down? I do think Skylar Thompson could have played into that kind of a consideration. Maybe they put Will Howard on IR so that they can just take 3 quarterbacks to the season, and they just rock out with that. Well, Will Howard learns, because again, I don't think Will Howard being the starting quarterback is what you eventually want this year, unless something's gone terribly wrong. But bottom line, I think Skylar Thompson did a good job there. Mason Rudolph, just the really bad thing was just the interception he threw there. I think there was another play where he stood in the pocket too long, and I thought messed up. But still, Mason, I think, is the number 2 guy without a doubt. So not too big there. I will say another loser that I added was Jaylen Warren, because one of the biggest things I've been concerned about Jaylen Warren was his ball security, because he had fumbled in the past for the Steelers, and they needed to kind of see if they could trust him with the ball in his hands. In fact, over his career, he has 7 fumbles to his name in 3 seasons. And that's across 473 career touches. Najee Harris in 4 seasons has 5 fumbles with 1,277 touches. So you're talking about almost 3 times as many touches that Najee's had, and he has less fumbles than Jaylen Warren. That's an underrated part that I thought Najee Harris always brought to the table. And Jaylen Warren has to prove that he can hold on to the football. Otherwise, it's going to put more pressure on the team to play Caleb Johnson, because they know that protecting the football is key to what they want to do there. So Jaylen Warren, I don't think he lost the starting spot, but I do think that that's something that the Steelers are going to take a closer look at moving forward. The other thing, as far as the losers, I thought the penalties, you can't win with penalties. I thought Jalen Ramsey's penalty was stupid, but again, I'm not too mad at it because it's just, whatever. It's the preseason. But there are other guys who committed penalties that I thought kind of lost and didn't have their redemption. Robert Woods who honestly, I think Robert Woods is kind of a loser for this whole, and not that he is a loser, but in the terms of winners and losers in a preseason game, I think this was one that he lost, and he probably lost his job, I think, because I really like Scotty Miller. I don't think they're getting rid of Ben Skoranek. I think there's some opportunities there, and Robert Woods just hasn't taken them. And unfortunately for him, that might be it when it comes to that. Ryan McCollum also had 2 penalties as the backup center. You kind of want to see better there. So, you want to see some stuff there. But all in all, I thought those are the biggest things. I thought Joey Porter Jr. and a few other guys, maybe Sean Elliott, could have tackled better. There were a couple plays where they let guys get loose. But all in all, still, I think the biggest story of this game is that you're just happy that Derrick Harmon did not come down with a season-ending injury. We'll see if that's an injury that lasts him into the season or well into the season, but he's at least coming back at some point this year. Good sign for the Steelers in that. But again, let me know who else stood out to you. There's a few other players that we could probably talk about moving forward. But to me, I look at Yahya Black playing so well, Derrick Harmon being healthy with an injury. Yes, there's sloppiness and you want to fix some things, but I do think there's some encouraging sign for the Steelers, especially with that defensive front, that they could be a really, really good unit. We're going to talk a lot more about that when we get back here Monday. The Steelers do have practices this weekend. I'm going to try to be at both, but sometimes your boy needs a chill day off. But we'll see what happens with that this weekend, and then we'll get you ready Monday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. The Steelers cutdown day is Tuesday, when we start to see players get cut beforehand. Maybe we'll talk about all that here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get your social media handles. Same handle everywhere. It's at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. I'll have a live chat, I believe, 10 a.m. tomorrow. So if you want to ask me questions, join me at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, or 10 a.m. today because you're watching this on Friday. But 10 a.m. Friday morning, I will have my live chat. So if you want to ask me questions, go there. Thanks again to all the Post-Gazette subscribers that participate in that every week. And thank you all for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll be back Monday with more here on your Steelers. Maybe we get some good updates from Derrick Harmon. If I get some updates this weekend, I'll put them in the YouTube feed as well as some of my social media handles. So do follow me there, because that's where I often give brief updates there on the Steelers. We'll get to all that moving forward on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We hope you have a great weekend.